Move that follows weeks of controversy surrounding the sector Education and Training Authorities board appointments. Dr. Newzroom Afrika has been removed from her role as the Minister of Higher Education and Training. Taking over the crucial portfolio is Buti Manamela, who had previously served as the Deputy Minister. Joining him as the new Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training is Dr. Nomusa Dube. This reshuffle comes just ahead of a scheduled parliamentary appearance by Dr. Gabans regarding the CETA debacle. Let's now get some reaction to these changes with the President of the South African Student Congress, Alungile Kamtshe, who's joining us in studio about this crucial shift in leadership of our nation's higher education sector. Very good morning to you. You guys have been calling for the removal of the minister, and now it has finally happened. How do you receive this?
There's every reason, Aldrin, to welcome this news. These are developments that, can be welcomed by any conscientious citizen in South Africa. So I'm very much happy and elated.
Yeah, but there's a conversation, I think, to be had about the conduct of a deployee and the expectations of, as the spokesperson for the presidency had said, a member of the executive. What's your reading into the conduct of Minister Gabans during this period?
I think Minister Gabans' conduct provides a case study for all deployees in government, for all government officials, into how to uphold ethical standards in terms of how you conduct yourself and how to understand your role as an accountable official, someone who's been endowed with a duty to, serve South Africans on the basis that you've been voted for. So you must be accountable. So I think the key aspect about former Minister Gabans is that she just refused to be accountable. I had a conversation with certain journalists, like in the media world, that said, Gabans would even refuse to hold certain interviews, which means...
we can attest to that. We didn't have this conversation, by the way. You and I have never had this conversation.
Yeah, we've never had this conversation, but I would have gotten that from certain journalists, that naturally it's a habit to run away from public accountability. You saw it with the portfolio committee, and she did a last ditch on Friday, not wanting to. So I think it provides just a clear case study for all South African government officials on to how to conduct themselves and remain accountable to the people that voted for them.
Yeah. On the other end, it is the portfolio committee as well. We're just speaking to our reporter, Kanita Hunter, that even when the minister had said, then minister had said that she's withdrawing the names of these CETA board chairpersons, that the portfolio committee said, but we still want to know how you got to those names. What does that then tell us about how Parliament's portfolio committee has approached this, irrespective of political affiliation?
One thing about democracy, the beauty of it is that citizens get to learn how are the operations legislatively, how are the operations of the executive. Now, everyone had an opportunity to learn that bipartisanship can take place in a parliament, and in order to address something that is significant of that level, So I think South Africans now have gotten a chance, to learn better, about the conduct of certain executives and how they can be held accountable by the legislative arm of government. So that is an important lesson for most of us.
Don't you read into this as well, the decision by the president that perhaps maybe it could actually have been because of the political pressure that has come from the likes of the Democratic Alliance, that when the appropriation bill comes and voting on these portfolios, voting on the department's budget, we won't be supporting those budgets. And maybe because of that, the president has given in to the threats and the demands that have come from the Democratic Alliance, in as far as it comes to Dr. Gabans.
We need to do a 360 degrees separation of the ability of, for instance, the African National Congress ability to whip votes in Parliament for any voting, for any particular voting, either for a bill or budget. Yeah? We need to separate that from the willingness of the president of the ANC, who's also the president of the country, to deal with a matter that is affecting the nation. So if we're able to do that, then we're going to be in a position to tell that it is actually the president who had to study the circumstances, the conditions, the pressure at which the entire society, not limited to political parties, not limited to SASCO, not limited to DA, not limited but the entire citizens, how tired they were of the conduct of Minister Gabans. So I would say it's a gravity at which the citizens themselves were tired about this minister that the president then decided to remove her.
Okay. And just finally, you have raised some other issues with the minister as well, and this is including the appointment of the NSFAS board, which you had said is illegal. What's the status of NSFAS currently in its ability to provide on its constitutional mandate to students? Because earlier on we're speaking to Tebo Kholitsi, and he says that students are still waiting for the allowances. Yeah,
well, that is true. Look, this is beating in the grapevine, but you people in the media world need to go and check this out, because we are reliably informed that there's a looming defunding that is going to take place of a massive number of students. We have not, gotten the figures as of yet. But besides that, what is in front of us is that NSFAS does take time to disperse allowances. And because we largely contribute this to how the board was composed, not only limited to student representation, which everyone think we're crying about, but also in terms of that composition, there isn't a rep from the Ministry of Finance, which would have easily, bridged the gap in terms of what would be the, the budgetary streams and the budgetary systems and the budgetary interests of the Department of Ministry in relation to higher education, would be able to bridge that so that when they do their own budgeting in the context of administering, management and the disbursements of allowances, they would have, that thing being addressed within that frame. Now, if the board of NSFAS isn't composed as it was said was going to be composed, because at the end of the day, whether the current composition satisfies or what meets the eye, it is still not in line with the legislative operation of that particular agency, which is the NSFAS Act. Its composition has problems. I have cited to you the lack of representation of students' reps. I've cited to you the lack of representation from the Ministry of Finance. But in any case, let's go back to the advertisement itself of the board. I don't know what excited Minister Nkabane to have an exclusionary advertisement. She had stated that in that gazette that a minimum of masters, there's a minimum masters requirement for anyone. But go to that board, you can find about 5 people who aren't having masters. You see. So it is a challenge how it is currently composed. I think it's one of the tasks that we'll hand to the new minister that to say, please address this issue, because every time there will be a decision taken by this board, we'll always refer to how was it composed. Its capacity to deliver will always be referred to how was it composed. Was the law followed to the latter in terms of the composition of this particular board?
Yeah, and speaking about the new minister, Action SA has come out to say that his appointment does not necessarily mean that this is a cleanup. This is somebody who has been in that department for over 10 years now, but of course as a deputy minister. Even when the department went through name changes, he was still there as a deputy minister.
Yeah, well, I think Action SA is operating like an opposition party. We are the student movement. We'll tell you facts. If you've been a deputy minister, to what level can you influence, the decision-making in the department, except for accepting delegation by the minister to do that and that and that and that? I think it's quite unfair at this stage to judge Minister Manamela based on his level of presence in the department. Actually, on the contrary, we would rather appeal to South Africans to give this chap a chance. Why? Because he's there to observe. He's there, he has observed, he has done a lot at the level of being a deputy minister, which would have not included appointments. Would have not included appointments. Does that signify a change, a massive change in the department? We are going to see. We do expect, gradual changes, because when we look at Minister Manamela, our interactions with him as students, student leadership, is that he carries with him the necessary sophistication to understand the complexities of this particular sector.
Yeah. conclude that point?
So, the point is here, Minister Manamela must be given a chance. It must not be judged by his role as a deputy. Must be judged by, you know, the wholeness of his experience in the sector, from having participated as a student activist, from having participated as a deputy minister, with the years that we are citing, and to cite the fact that it would be unfair to judge him based on his deputy ministerial position, because then you couldn't, you know, and you still can't, you know, perform any appointments, because you are a deputy minister. Your role is to execute duties that are delegated to you by the Constitution and the minister, him or herself. So let's not judge Mr. Let's give him time.
Okay, so you're confident though, yeah?
I am.
You're confident,
I
okay.
am.
Alungile Kamtshe
But
is...
I'm prepared to come back when he's not doing right and say he's not doing right.
And you'll call him out.
And we'll call him out.
Alungile Kamtshe is the president of SASCO. Their reaction on the president firing Nobuhle Ngabane. And that's the poll question that we're running to, today.